So here I have king queen suited. I face a 3-bet, and here it's just like a really standard like call or 4-bet spot. Like it's always a hand that you should be playing. I would 4-bet like from time to time, but I think like just calling a 3-bet at this stakes can be slightly better because you just want to go play like some flops with them.
Yeah.
Flop, yeah, they will make mistakes on.
Especially with
So
like king queen suited. Like I hate in this spot I hate four betting king queen suited because if I get
yeah,
jammed on I get denied so much equity.
right. But in general, I would say like I'm not a big fan of like playing 3-bet pots out of position.
Hmm.
Um, it's just a thing where like when you play a 3-betting only strategy, it's always more fun when you're in position, right? Um, so yeah, I would say like I 4-bet more aggressively than most regs because I
Mm-hmm.
just really don't like playing out of position.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, so yeah, we face a check, which is like something I would always take note about because when it just shows like his strategy is based on a check bet strategy and not like a pure bet strategy like ours. Well, okay, at least for me, my strategy when I 3-bet pre-flop and I'm in position is to always bet. It's like always bet 1/3 pot. I feel like it's a strategy where it's really hard for villain to play against.
Mm-hmm.
Even on boards like 4, 5, 6, where our range is not particularly the best.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I get what
we
you're
have
saying.
to, yeah, we have to recognize that his range is not particularly good as well because he isn't calling that many 7/8 suited out of position.
Mm-hmm.
He's not supposed to, but yeah, from time to time he does. But we have 7/8 in our range as well, right? When we 3-bet from the button.
Yeah.
So in some sort of sense, our range doesn't lose to him. We have more premiums and we have position. So all in all, these things added together make it really good for a spot where we just bet 1/3 pot and there's really nothing he can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say my strategy would center around that. So yeah, I will take note that he doesn't do that. So on the turn, my original plan was to either bet or check raise because I think my hand just has so much equity and
And
I'm
he
not a
just doesn't
fan.
have most nutted hands here, but you do.
Right. And if he has a hand like ace queen or like just some ace five suited or like ace six
Yeah, he
suited,
might
I
just
think
take a stab.
yeah. I think if he takes a stab, I am check raising pretty wide here. And if not, then I think I should be betting myself. I think what's like really fun is to include some like overbets here.
Yeah,
Because
because he just doesn't have very, very strong hands.
yeah, we have more sets here, which is like something interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I think like overbetting would be a fun idea, but like I said, if you haven't done
Now we also
much
have
of
like
this stuff,
9x quite a lot
yeah, we have a
compared to
bunch of
his range,
9x,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think check, and then when he bets half pot, like I said, I decided to go for the check raise.
Hmm.
Um, and he calls. And then on the river, when the blank comes, and my idea at that point was that I don't have spades, right? So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Um, I block kings and queens. So
You
I block,
blocking Jack too?
yeah, and so I block a bunch of like king, like Jack X suited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's only left with like maybe Queen Jack, King Jack, hearts and diamonds combo. Um, so yeah, I decided to go for the jam, and now we're just really gonna see how our bluffing range should be on the turn. So what I was curious about is what I should be check raising on the turn, because
Mm-hmm.
I felt like at some point, it's a board where I would check raise very often with a hand like 9x. It's a board where I would check raise with sevens, some 10-8. I don't really have much 10-8, but the occasional time that I do, I want to check raise them. Um, and then yeah, so I just wanted to know like what I'll be bluffing with, and it felt like this hand was just a good hand to be in there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so same thing. We will have two separate versions of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as a standard, we start out as a check, and because like this is like such a small percentage,
You
I'll
just
just
know
like
lock it out, yeah.
yeah, I'll just like I'll just not touch it. It's just like too minor. But after like facing the check, we see that Villain should be betting one third pot a lot, but we aren't sure about his strategy, so I'm not gonna touch this. I'll just assume that he has like the most optimal strategy in the world, which is like the PO strategy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the best way to go around it, I feel. So when we face a check, and so is it like the nine of diamonds?
Nine of
Yeah, so
diamonds.
it's
Yeah.
a all right. So the nine of diamonds comes, and uh, you know, we have like apparently like a really clear check where we don't bet really often, and when we do, we bet really big. So I feel like this is PO trying to tell us that we should um maybe give it the option to overbet.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you see
Mm-hmm.
something like this where you are supposed to be betting on the bigger side, don't just take this as face value and say like, oh, betting $14 into $18 is the best play. It's one of those times where you should think about if PO advocates for betting big so much at a small percentage,
Yeah.
maybe it's just trying to tell you that you should give it the chance to overbet.
Overbet with that part of your range. Yeah. Exactly.
Right, right, right. So, just to keep it simple, I didn't like entertain that option. And I just wanted to see like how our check raising range should be like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as played, we check, right, and then, villain bets $9. And then we are raising sometimes with king queen suited, but sadly it is not with the king queen of clubs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 Why
yeah,
is it
and
the
then
hearts though? Wait.
so I
And the
so I gave it
spades.
some I gave it some thought, and then I realized that if villain were to play a check or bet strategy on the flop, a lot of his check strategy would be king queen of clubs exactly because it has the backdoor flush draw, right? And the two overcards and the 10 as an out to the nut straight. So when we hold king queen of clubs, we block exactly him holding the king queen of clubs or hand like ace queen of clubs. Hence
Mm.
that he would want to check back and realize his backdoor flush draw. Um, and then why King Queen of Hearts becomes such an attractive check raise is because most of the time when he checks back a hand like King Queen of Clubs, which he should, he ends up stabbing the turn, and King Queen of Hearts becomes a good bluff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. But I feel like it's one of those spots where if you have king queen regardless of the suit, if you wanted to make the check raise, you just go for it. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
those spots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at that time, I think I just decided to go for it. And I think I wanted to find out like what bluffs I want to include in my range, and then I think I realized that if I included non 8x and 10x hands, it would be too wide. Because you can see like PO's raising range centers around 8x as bluffs.
Yeah.
And the times that it doesn't, it has 9x as bluffs. I mean, sorry, 10x as bluffs. And then 9x would be like pure value, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So basically, what you should like the summary or the lesson that you should learn from this simulation is that when you bluff here, you should always have the blocker to the straight,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or the blocker to a hand that has 9x, which is like knight 10, 9 8. So any hand that has an 8 or a 10 would just like be perfect as a check raise. And king queen suited is surprisingly just a fold, even with like two overcards. So yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, that is surprising. That, but I
yeah.
still like your play more.
Because it's like slightly more aggressive.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's justifiable, because if you think about flop checking range, so here, okay, let's say like we go back. So on the right side, if we go back to the start of the game, we always check, right? And villain is supposed to have this checking range, which includes like aces and like king jack and like um queen nine, even queen nine of spades, right? It's supposed to be in his checking range. But if you think logically about that, his checking range is never going to be this strong. It's always going to be slightly weaker. Well, I would say like drastically weaker. So my check raise just becomes better because he's never checking like good hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so basically, what I'm saying is that my check raise play is not approved by PioSolver,
Yeah.
but in some sort of sense, it will always be decent because when he checks, he's always like checking really weak hands. He's never like checking strong most of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
So
also,
like, mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of opponents might take the passive line with sometimes just giving up. Like you said, like ace queen, some sort of ace five suited, stuff like that. They
Yeah.
see that board, they know it hits your range a lot, And
Mm-hmm.
um, some people might even see that board as being just like hitting you way too hard and not study Pio a lot and not know that they have to bet like 2/3 of the time with like a 1/3 size
Yep.
and just be. I know that people sometimes just check range there, except for
Mhm.
the obvious pocket nines
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sevens,
yeah,
right? So I know people that would definitely do that.
yeah, for sure. So like, I think check raising just becomes like pretty good if you discount some of the stronger hands that he should be checking.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah,
Especially with the
uh,
blockers.
right. So yeah, I think when we check raise, and so on the left when we check raise and we get a call, um and we should, so surprisingly he's supposed to call like pretty wide, like at 61%. Even let's see what funky calls are in there. So a hand like ace eight of hearts is a call half the time, and I would say like that's pretty, it's a call that like I feel most players don't make, right? Against check raise. So yeah, when we get a call here and the river is a blank, I think I just wanted to know whether King Queen is a ship or not. So when we reach the river like this, then King Queen of Clubs becomes like apparently a really good ship along with King Queen of Diamonds. So compared to King Queen of Hearts, I think King Queen of Clubs is supposed to have some
Hmm.
like a
Hmm.
better EV here.
Yeah.
So yeah, so King Queen of Clubs becomes like a really good ship here. It makes some sense, I guess, because we do still block kings and queens,
Yep.
right? Um, and yeah, and as balance, we will definitely shove our 9x and just sets and pocket pairs. I mean, and like sets and
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, 9x. It's just really straightforward here. I think there are no like funky hands, I would say, like that are mergy value betting. So occasionally from time to time you will see Pio shoving a hand like, let's say, Queen Jack here,
Yeah.
where it's really thin because it's hard to get villain to call something worse, right? Um,
But
but yeah,
I guess that. So you're talking about Queen Jack now, right? I
yeah.
guess
So
the idea is
specifically,
that Queen Jack blocks more than it gets called by worse.
mhm.
So it blocks queens and also blocks better top pairs. So it's like
I
a
would.
mergey jam. I've seen this before with like Pio. It does like these mergey jams,
Mhm.
right? So it
I
like
would.
blocks queens, hard to get called by worse if you look at like your opponent's calling range, obviously. But also it kind of blocks like a lot of his calling range. So if those hands don't exist, then it becomes like plus EV.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If you can get villain to call, so if we shove here and villain is supposed to call a hand like, if he has some pocket fives in there that our call, then Queen Jack suited becomes a really good shove, right? Because when you face a shove, it tends to be kind of polarized in a game theory perspective, and against a polarized hand. Pocket fives has the same value as aces because, well, not aces, maybe it has the same value as like ace jack, I would say, because ace jack facing like a raise on the turn and a shove on the river,
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's kind of bluff catching as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It feels like that. Um, so it really boils down to the blockers. And you can see like just eights is a call sometimes, and it makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because of like blockers. Yeah. Um, I would say like before calling King Jack off specifically. So King Jack off you can see here is a call, right?
But especially with a spade, yeah.
Yeah, so but if you ask me, I would always choose to call pocket eights before King Jack off because I think not many villains are capable of check raising a hand like Ace Jack.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say in my shoes, I think on the turn, what would be smart is, for me to check raise some Ace Jack. So when we face a check on the flop, and on the turn we check again with a hand like if we check a hand with a hand like Ace Jack, for example. Um, I think from time to time, check raising, ace jack is a decent play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we, check raise like so here like ace jack suited, we check raise some ace jack suited, it'll be a decent play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if we exclude this hand from, our range, then What it means is that when we check raise, we are like more polarized, where we really just have sets and straights and um, like air.
Yeah.
And against that range, pocket fives will be doing okay. So you don't want to call off pocket fives and then realize that villain is value betting ace jack like that, right?
That's
So
so
it would look
insane.
pretty stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
But pocket fives will do well against a polarized range, but not against a range where like ace jack is like check raising on the turn when it's really
of
close. So
course.
yeah,
There's
yep.
also a very good question in chat.
Oh yeah.
If we think opponent doesn't defend enough versus check raise on turn, we're probably over bluffing river if we copy Pyro range.
Um. So I would say if villain defends really tight, so what I would look for is, let's say against this and I check raise, and let's say if he doesn't call hands like these, so like if I can find like too much green, so what I call it is like too much green, which is like um he's not capable of defending a hand like king 8, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
Of
Okay, well,
spades,
king
you
8 is
mean? Yeah.
always, yeah, spades. Oh no, okay, so let's look for another hand. Let's say, well, everything is kind of spades. Well, okay, like this hand, like ace 8 of hearts, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's like I've probably never seen something like that like ever
right.
getting
Uh,
defended. Mm-hmm.
but I guess ace 8 of hearts would be one of those hands where if you call the turn, and you
Mm-hmm.
face
Mm-hmm.
a shove on the river, then you gotta call if it's blank, right? It makes sense to call if
Yeah,
it's blank.
exactly.
But I guess like
Wow.
ace 8 is really good because the 8 of hearts blocks 8 9 specifically. Because if you look at the 9x on the board, it's the 9 of clubs and 9 of diamonds are there.
Yeah, so
So
you're
the only
blocking
possible,
nine eight
yeah,
hearts, yeah,
yeah, and like the only
and
one,
ace nine hearts.
yeah, precisely. So yeah, so if villain is never defending her hand like ace 8, or maybe a hand like, I don't know, ace queen. No, ace queen is never defend. Ace king, yeah. So for some reason, ace 8 is like in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then king 10 is always a defend for some reason. Um,
Wow.
so if our opponent is not capable of calling a check raise
You
here
see, the
with like
EV
ace
of
10,
calling is pretty huge actually compared to
yeah,
folding.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like wow,
precisely.
holy shit.
So, if he's never capable of that, then I would say like we have to be more careful about jamming the river. So I would say if let's say PO advocates me to jam like 50% of the river, I'm never jamming. I would say I'm never jamming like more than 40%. I would have to be like really picky about the hands I want to jam here. Like if let's say
Mm.
like ace five of spades, I would just say like just fold.
Yeah,
Um,
because you're kind of blocking his folding range, right?
Right. So like, it will look kind of stupid when you shove with like ace five suited and you get like a call from ace eight suited. Um, so I meant, okay, is he ever calling? Okay, no, he's never calling. Okay, so like I would
Love.
say like ace eight suited is a pretty like godlike kind of call. If you recognize that villain is only raising a polarized range,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
ace eight still beats all air hands, right? It still beats king 10. It still beats king queen. I would say against me, ace eight is like a really good call in this spot, I would
Yeah.
say. But it takes a lot of balls. um, so yeah. Yep.
Somebody asks if you're from Malaysia or Singapore in chat.
Yeah, I'm from Singapore.
Yeah, anything personal you don't have to reveal or anything if you want to keep it
Okay.
anything. If you
Yeah.
want to keep anything like secret, that's absolutely fine.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks for wait, somebody. Thanks for telling me it's a good question. I started playing learning cash games since quarantine. Well, that's really fast, honestly. Imagine somebody who just started playing and learning cash games since quarantine and already has like questions like this, like the one that I asked you. It's pretty
Hmm.
fast. Pretty fast progress.
Yeah, for
Nice.
sure. Um. Yeah. So.
Also, King Queen of Clubs is good shove as played because you block Queen Nine of Clubs and King Nine of Clubs. A good one. Good one. Okay.
So there was someone saying like, how can you play good on river when you play bad on the turn, right? So just to like reiterate, the thing is that although PO thinks like king queen of clubs is not a good check raise on a turn, it becomes a really good check raise
Mm-hmm,
when
mm-hmm.
villain isn't checking back the range he is supposed to be. So normally when players check back, their range tends to be heavily weighted towards air, and cards that really just want a cheap showdown. And check raising king queen of clubs can be a really good hand to just get rid of a hand like pocket sixes, right? Pocket fives, or even some ace highs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a hand like ace king, if you can check raise with king queen and get ace king to fold, it's a really huge win rather than like checking three streets and just letting ace king showdown with like ace high. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so yeah. So therefore, like although on PO it doesn't look so good, in general, if we like do tweak the ranges, we can make it a way that it will look good. But the whole point is like just to check whether villain is even checking back such a range. So on the right side you can see like a like the check back range.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
like checking something like this, I would say. So yeah, he's never checking like ace jack. I would say like we can just assume that it's like 100% bet from him. Even a hand like king jack, I would say like most people are just like very enthusiastic about
Mm-hmm.
betting this
Mm-hmm.
hand. Yeah, and if you play it right, then you should be checking sometimes. So yeah, so this just makes king queen a better bluff, basically. So yeah.
Nice. Nice. Also, Andre Cos, who's an Ultimate 50 player at the moment, but I think he's
Mhm.
played higher before too. He says, I don't think people check back ace high and bet on paired turn.
I would say like if I had a hand like ace king of clubs or something, I would say it's a good spot where I can bet one third pot. Um, and I get your low pocket pairs to fold. Or I bet half pot and get your low pocket pairs to fold, or I just get value from like all your 8x and 10x hands like queen 10 and like 8 6, and betting ace king just becomes really good, right? Um,
Mm.
because in some sort of sense you are protecting your hand, but you are getting value from every single thing.
Yeah,
So
actually,
eight,
like betting ace
yeah,
king and ace queen, I really like it there.
yeah. So it might look really exploitative because I feel like a check bet line is taken too much with ace king. Um, but if you face players with a very good check back line, um, ace king becomes a really strong bet where you just bet half pot. You can see like ace king sometimes is like it's largely a bet if you have like even ace king of hearts, right? Because ace king of hearts just wants to get like a lot of value from like 8x, 10x, and um, every ace high it can get value from, even ace queen. So I would say like betting here is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good like value bet, and the times that you are losing to a hand like queen jack, you do still have outs. It's not the end of the world. So yeah.
Nice. And
Yep.
also, a question from a micro grinder in chat. What are the
Mhm.
advantages of check raising with blockers and equity versus check shoving?
You mean check raising but not check shoving?
Tight pockets, could you explain your question? All right. Anyways, um, all right. So, are we done with the hand? Is there any other questions in chat? 8x, 10x. I lead turn 100% after villain checks backs flop.
So okay, here's something interesting to think about. If you think like you want to lead a lot of 8x and 10x,
Mm.
is it better to lead 8x and get a call from a hand like ace king and then face a tough decision on the
Or
river,
just
or do you,
realize more equity when your opponent also checks, right?
yeah, so you want to either, so okay, so what he's asking I think is,
No, this
do
is
you
a
want to,
separate person. It's a separate person.
oh, so it's Andre who's asking the question, right?
Yeah. Okay. You have chat open too, right?
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you lead on the turn with 8x and 10x, there is a high chance you get something like ace king to call, and it's tougher to bet turn and then bet river because you are out of position, and when you start putting a lot of money out of position, um, you know there is a very famous line in poker that says it's better to be the one who's reacting, if you get what I mean. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the in position player gets to react against two of your bets, whereas you have to kind of like bet in the dark with like 8x and 10x. So is it better to just check, and then when he checks, we realize our equity, and when he doesn't, we just go for the check raise and end the hand there. Um, so yeah.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, I would say my favorite line to take is definitely check raising if I could. But the only reason I don't check raise all the time is because if you do it, it's just like too often. And I don't have enough like value hands to balance in there. Um, so yeah. Uh, yeah, so I think that's all for that question. But you could, I think leading there is perfectly standard.
There's definitely some
Some
hands
hand.
that
Yeah,
want to. I think. I think like
yeah.
isn't like ace eight like a lead?
Yeah, it is like sometimes,
Because
but
it kind of blocks this check back call. It blocks the ace king and ace queen. That's kind of like my first impression
Yeah.
that that
I
would
think
be a good lead.
I think Ace 8 is a really good lead because it's one of those hands where players can be very comfortable betting but not very comfortable check calling.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, therefore it becomes like a better lead. Because if you check and he bets, then Ace 8 becomes like a check raise.
Yeah.
Well, but I don't think a lot of players are like check raising Ace 8 here. So they'll just end up folding a hand like ace eight of hearts because they will find that they don't have a lot of equity, and like even hand if the 10 comes on the river that gives you the straight, you are still counterfeited by a better straight, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you still are beat by a boat, and it can be really hard to play against. Um, and that's also a good reason why ace eight is a check raise because you just want to end the hand there. So yeah,
And also, Tide Pockets explained his question. He was talking
yeah.
in three bet pots, check raising versus check shoving. I've seen good players check shove with a hand like Jack 10 on 7-8-5 on the flop. Well, yeah, no, I'll let you take this one.
Okay. So I think you can do that if you feel like villain is stabbing too wide. So in like lower stakes, I think when you three bet
He's
out of
playing
position.
Nolman 2, I think. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So when you three bet out of position, you have a bunch of like ace kings and ace queens that miss, right? Um, and you end up checking a lot, and villain knows this, and therefore he stabs a lot, and then a hand like Jack 10 becomes a very profitable check shove because um what can villain do, right? He stabs a lot. He doesn't have that many sevens, eights, and fives. He has some, but not a lot.
Mm.
If he has a hand like 9 10, um, what can he do? So
Yeah.
if you check raise, a hand like 9 10 can play really well in position. But when you check shove Jack 10, 9 10 is kind of stuck
Mm-hmm.
because it
Mm-hmm.
knows that it can never call. It never has the perfect, like the right price to call.
Yep.
So therefore, like check shoving here might be better. But I would say like if you check shove out of position, you are risking a lot of money. The times that you do get called. So yeah, do be careful. It might just be better to check call because with two overcards, I think hitting a pair is
You got
still
enough
somewhat
equity, yeah.
valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's somewhat valuable. Um, so yeah,
It's probably like similar EV, but versus a more complex opponent at high stakes, it's just better to like end the hand there.
yeah,
Right? I
yeah,
think that would be a consideration because there's nothing in the world that even like Linus can do when you just go all in, right? It's
right,
just a
right, right,
simple decision of like pot odds. It becomes a decision of pot odds versus opponent's range, right? But there's
right.
nothing, no strategy, no strat that you can like apply. But at like a limit like no limit 2, there's plenty that you can do. Like if you're like the three better.
I would say like if you do decide to adopt this strategy, think about what are you ever shoving as value? Because if
Mm.
some low stakes player were to shove on me on 7 8 5, I might snap call with ace king because I know he's never shoving some pocket sevens there.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really face up what you have. You have something like 9 10 and like like ace six or something, and it's really easy to play against that.
You also have to have some value, right? Like you check
Right,
jam
right.
what like tens.
Yeah, I think so. What's interesting if you include a hand like 6 5, um, it's actually pretty good because you might get ace eight to fold, and when
Yeah.
6 5 gets called by a hand like ace king, 6 5 is actually really really ahead,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
compared to getting called by like jack 10. So yeah,
Absolutely. Very very nice answer. I could never frame it better than that like ever. So I'm glad I let you take the question.
okay,
All right.
yeah,
So I
okay,
think we're done with the hand. Can we go to
okay,
like the next one, or is there
all right.
like something else that you'd like to?
So, wait. So how much time do we have exactly?
Plenty, as much as
Okay,
you want.
okay. So maybe as a change of pace, for like a change of pace, let's go something interesting. Let's go to Monkasolver
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
most no limit hold'em players don't ever get exposed to this. Like they might never get exposed to this. And I think a lot of PLO players who use Market Solver, they don't really use for no limit hold'em for
Yeah,
no
of
limit hold'em
course.
slots. Yeah. So here I've
Why
got
would
like
they?
a
Why
really,
would they play the
yeah, why would they
two
ever,
card
right?
PLO?
Yeah, precisely.
No way.
So here I have something really interesting. Um, so
A UI nightmare.
yeah, we have like this is something PioSolver would never be able to solve. It just takes like it's not because PioSolver is a two-person's game, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here what we have, this scenario is under the gun versus button versus big blind. So on the screen on the bottom left, you see that you only see three guys there. But the green guy is basically the under the gun player, right?
Yeah.
And then the button is obviously the button, and the guy in the small blind is actually the big blind. So this scenario
Mm-hmm.
only
Mm-hmm.
is only possible when the button has a calling range, and the cutoff, and the MP is not supposed to have a calling range, so I'll just ignore that. Um, so here, if we look at ranges, we will see something like this, where the button is calling something like
Very
6.9%.
tight. Yeah.
Yeah, and the big blind, which is a small blind. So I'll say this again: the big blind is a small blind.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
calling a lot of suited hands, right? Because he just has great odds.
Absolutely.
Um, and then the under the gun player is supposed to be opening like the top left hands and like suited ace X and like some pocket pairs,
Yes.
which is like absolutely standard.
Yeah.
Like
So
nothing.
technically, it's tight pocket. Thanks you, by the way.
Oh yeah, no
Uh,
problem.
yeah, and yeah, I understand. Like it's just out of position, right? And then the
Yeah.
player in the middle, and then the player who has position. Gotcha.
Mhm. So here there's really like nothing special. But what's interesting is okay. So let's say you have aces right under the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would say a lot of players start betting aces, right? Because they think it's a pretty good hand, right,
Yep.
for the undergun player. But if you look at how game theory plays a 10-6-5 rainbow board, when under the gun has aces, kings, and queens, I think you'll be really surprised. Because let's say if the big blind checks 100% of the time, the under the gun is always supposed to be checking. So under gun player is never supposed to be leading out,
Yeah, hundred
even
percent
though
check.
yeah, it's like a 98.5% check.
I'm
So
actually
this is
guilty of going like one third, almost full range on this board
mhm,
because other players adapt very, very hard to that, or even like a quarter, like multi-way. I do that, and I'm
mhm.
very, very aggressive because I get overfold from like a lot of people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just as exploit for like you guys, people are terrible in three-way pots. I do that in tournaments all the time, just steal them consistently. And even I have spots like, let's say I call in the small blind with like 5-6 suited, or even
Mhm,
5-6 off sometimes. Just
mhm.
don't tell anybody. And big blind comes along, and it's like a short stack sort of situation, right? And big blind comes along, and I get a flop like 7-5-3, and I just 2x spot jam there because I deny so much equity. But also when I do
Yeah.
get called, I got plenty of equity, so it's just like a really really good spot, just 2x spot jam. And I was
Yeah.
actually talking to another high stakes reg last night about that, and he was actually slightly surprised. But
Mhm.
and he wanted to pio it, and I said no way, don't take away my happiness, please. But I have enough equity there to jam like 2x spot easy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And like on a 7 high board, you deny so much.
Mhm. Yeah. So, here I think what's surprising is basically the under the gun guy is like checking a lot. So even though this ball is kind of good for him, right? Um, he has the same amount of like 10 sixes and fives, I would say, as the button player. But he has all the big pocket pairs, and even with the big pocket pairs, he should still be checking a lot. And this is something where even the highest of the highest no limit hold'em players they don't do. So they in some sort of sense they bet a lot. They start betting 70% pot on 10-6-5 with aces, and then
Yeah.
on the turn when the jack comes or when a queen comes, they start over betting. Right? I think it's something you see really often.
Mm-hmm.
And then now because we have Marcus Solver, we realize in a three-way scenario people should play really differently. Something interesting about Marcus Solver is that there is an equity graph to check
Oh
how.
yeah, who has like nut advantage and then range advantage? Yeah,
Right. So you can
it's
see
very
like because
close.
the green player is the under the gun player, right?
Uh huh.
Um, you can see like the button actually kind of dominates him because
Yeah, in
in this
nuts. Yeah.
spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's always like kind of dominated. Other than this part where the button kind of has like 10x and then he's beat by under the guns overpair, which is like really standard.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then
That's the other part of the range. Yeah.
right. And then when we start to move down, we just have like a bunch of air. But for some reason, I think the button has like more air, so like more sevens, more fours, like threes, stuff that beats like villains ace high, like under the guns ace high and stuff. So in some sort of sense, this part doesn't matter, but like in this portion you can see the equities are actually quite close, and it's not like, so when we have close equities, it just means like the button is in a more favorable position, right?
Yeah.
Um, and if you look at the top left, you can see the button's EV, SB, and BB's EV. The button's EV is really high. It's at 361.1 BB per 100, and the under the gun player is only at 250. So in some sort of sense, the button is always dominating the spot. So we should be very careful when we are playing under the gun here. So what I mean is, like, when you have top pair and like over pairs and like sets, don't just like straight out go out betting,
Oh yeah.
because most of the time it's just better to start off with a check. First of all, it's like definitely easier to play by starting off with a check, and second of all, like if you are betting, there's just like a lot of things that can go really wrong for you because you're betting into two players and you don't even like have position basically. So yeah, it just shows how important like position and how many players behind is like a crucial factor basically. So yeah. Yeah. So the interesting thing comes when it's the button's turn to act, because he's supposed to bet really aggressively, with like 62%. I would say, basically his whole range can be somewhat connected. Like, so he has a bunch of like backdoor flush draws. So you can see here he has like a bunch of overcards, and he has like 46% of his hands have like a backdoor. So in some sort of sense, the button always has really decent equity here. Um, so yeah, I think the only thing that the button should maybe shy away from betting is like clubs. Hands with a club, maybe he might bet less. But other than that, like if he has like hearts, you see his betting frequency goes up to like 77%. If he has diamonds, it's 77%. If he has spades, it's 75%. And then when he has clubs, it's like 62.5%. Um, so
Yeah,
when he
because
has
there's
clubs,
no club though now. Yeah.
right. So when he has clubs, what's he betting? He's betting like basically overcards and like backdoor straights. And then some ace highs, because it's really profitable to bet ace highs and just get your opponents to fold the hand like two overcards, right?
Yep.
Just want to push them out of the pot, and it's a 33% pot bet, so
Yeah, you deny
it's never
equity. Yeah.
right, for sure. So what we can learn here is, first of all, like by testing two different sizings, 33% and 66% pot. So for those who don't know how to read it, there are two different sizings here. We let the solver choose what sizing is optimal, basically. And the solver has just basically told us that betting 66% is never smart. And you should always bet small. Yeah.
If you bet two
Um,
thirds there, you're a dum dum.
yeah. And then, so for some reason, you watch high stakes poker and you see a bunch of players playing four-way pots
I
betting
think so. Okay.
66%. And then you really ask yourself, do they really know how to play the game, and is the game still beatable? Then I think like it's really clear that the games are still beatable, because
Absolutely.
they're not even playing well. They
Yeah,
are making
people
a
are
big
bad
mistake.
in three way.
Yeah, precisely. So there's a lot of money to be made here. So, well, okay, let's say just for fun, let me check my three-way. So, if let's say, so I've played a bunch of like 50 NL and like a bunch of I would say 100 NL. So if let's say,
That's a solid graph. I'll tell you that.
okay, uh, so players seeing the flop, let's go 3 to 6, right? And then let's filter that in. Save and apply, and then let's only see hold'em games. So yeah, bunch of money to be made here. I don't even think I was playing like perfectly here. And
92 blinds per 100. Solid. Solid.
yeah, no, so it's like 92 blinds if like the money I've made, but like based on EV, it's like
Oh
half of
yeah,
30.
yeah, adjusted. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's really a bunch of money to be made here. So yeah, based on the simulation, you can just see like next time when you play, think about betting smaller, and even if you do have aces on the gun, it's just like a check. Um, and if you are on the button, you should be betting really wide with like basically like everything. And then when
Yep.
you think about checking, just a lot of cards that are checking are just like so like just based on like trends, like game theory trends. A lot of cards that are checking are like over cards. So like ace king off, it's ace high. It still weed. It still beats a lot of under the guns opening range. So on the off chance that you flat a hand like ace queen off and ace check off against the undergun player, um, it's really profitable for you to just like see a free card and you are still ahead of his range in some sort of sense. So it's fine. And then you have a bunch of like 5x and 6x in there, and like the middle pocket pairs that really just don't want to inflate the pot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then when you have a hand like fours, threes, and deuces, you just have so much incentive to just like check because when the flop goes check check check, under the gun can start piling in money with a hand like aces and kings, and when you hit a set, like it's just really profitable for you on the turn. So it's just a really good check in general, I would say. So yeah, are there any like interesting things that you want to check out on this simulation?
Hmm. I think I'd be interested. Let's see. So it's pretty clear that big blind is never leading out, right, on the
Right,
flop.
right, right,
And
right.
it's pretty clear that also early position is also checking range here on the flop.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
um, how much is so like if the button starts betting here,
Hmm.
right, the 1/3, how
Yeah.
much are we getting check raised by big blind or by early position?
Well, I think you are supposed to get check raised really wide, right? Because of the size,
Yeah,
right?
and because early position checks range. True.
Yeah, and so I would say okay, so for players that have been trying their best to play well multi-way,
Hmm.
the best I've seen them play is when they are under the gun, they do check range sometimes, and
Okay.
then when they do, they check raise a lot with their
Holy
hands.
shit, that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really
Wow.
common to check raise a hand like queens and kings and
Yeah,
aces.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense, right? Um, because you are facing a range on the button where the button has just like so much backdoor flush draws
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
much like back straight draws that check raising like over pairs become really good because you can check raise them and you can like overshove the turn if you want to and um, get calls from really marginal hands.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's fun. It looks very fun. The check raising range for this
Yeah,
is like early position check raise after big blind folded. It looks
yeah.
really fun just because I see. No, can you leave it at that? Because I want to see. Oh no, it's good. It's
Okay,
good. It's good.
okay, okay.
King six suited. It has like really high frequency, and I really like that. And there's these mergey check raises like 7-6 suited, like exactly what I said, like the lines that Pio takes sometimes. It's just mergey check raise because you want to end the hand now. You want protection from the hands that he could get there with, right? With like a top
Yeah,
pair or
right.
something better than you. Some 8-7 suited 8-9 that was very expected. Interesting that we get check raised with a decent frequency with pocket tens. I would actually not expect that. I'd expect like tens to be very often just a check call, and jacks to be check raised more often just because they need more protection. Sorry.
Mhm.
And then ace 10 is quite obvious, I think.
Yeah.
Kings and queens, and aces slightly less.
So I'm not sure about the answer to this, but I would say check raising tens might be really good because the button has a bunch of overpairs in its flatting range preflop as well. And if you do check raise tens, you might actually just stack the overpairs right now when the flop is
Wait,
just
wait,
really
wait.
dry.
Over pairs, which what do you mean? Is he not three betting jacks or preflop or
So on the button, I think the button's range, he has some stuff like queens and jacks because if he's playing, like I said, if he's playing perfectly,
yeah,
he sh
I get that now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think there is a lot of incentive to stack a hand like ace ten, well not really ace ten because you have tens, right? There
Mm-hmm.
is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of incentive to stack off like against like queens and jacks and like the occasional like lower sets. So that might be why pocket tens is a check raise. So yeah. But if you play in lower stakes where queens and jacks are being three bet
Three bet
all the time,
most often. Yeah.
yeah, then tens really isn't a really good check raise and just like a better check call. And at the same time, maybe tens just wants to get as much value as it can from like all the backdoor flush draws, backdoor straight draws, and like the over
I'd
card.
imagine like nines is calling too, right? There are
You
still
mean
some 10x combos. Yeah, nines versus the check raise.
like you mean on the button?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like I think nines is like yeah, it's really like half there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Eights
yeah.
is
So I
getting
think
called. Yeah, a lot
yeah,
too.
it's just gonna come. So yeah, I think well maybe eights because it can make more backdoor straights maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I would say
Also,
nobody
if you're
plays
check
seven eight.
raising 7-8 as like early position, the nine is kind of a horrible card because he gets stacked,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So that's why nines is like slightly lower.
Yeah, even if you do hit the set, it's just bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
I think
huge raising range, huge raising range. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Just you gotta like play really aggressive if you are the under the gun player, basically. And there are like really obvious bluffs, like Queen Jack of Spades, right? Where the ten of Spades is
Oh
out there, and
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
really
it's just
good.
really clear. It's just really clear that these hands are just like bluffs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you do still have like King Queen occasionally in there, which makes a lot of
King
sense
Queen
because
King Jack.
Ace,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like Ace High is being bet a lot by the button, and if you do get Ace High to fold, it's still a win after all.
Uh huh.
Um, so yeah,
Can we
yeah, so
see like yeah, you finish
yeah.
first, yeah.
Oh, so what I was saying is that if you think about like check raising, it's really not as complex as what people think. It's really just like check raising like really strong backdoor flush draws, check raising over pairs, and check raising some sets, and then calling like really good ones. And then you also have like just blocker plays like 6-7, right, and like ace five.
Yeah,
So if
merge,
right,
sort of
right,
like mergey hands that you want to check raise, just because you benefit so much by ending the hand there
right. So
with
if you
them.
add these three things together, you just like basically know the game theory guideline to how what you should check raise,
Hmm.
and then
You're kind of
it just
just like
yeah,
polarizing pretty much. Very
right.
hard, very hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so what were you saying just now?
Um, I think so. Like if early position calls
Mhm.
here,
Yeah.
and we get a brickiest turn, like the offsuit deuce, right? The rainbow deuce,
Okay.
because nobody has 3-4.
Yeah.
How much is button barreling? We never lead. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And
It's like
he's so we have a
it's like
jab.
half.
I like the fact that we have like a shove.
Good job. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of
it's
weird.
done like almost never, or is
Yeah.
it
It's almost never.
like king five?
So it's just basically like the solver saying
It's
that
like an
if you
inaccuracy, or
yeah. It's an
okay, yeah.
inaccuracy.
All right,
Yeah.
so
Because
we're
yeah.
it's interesting that it did choose like king five. All right, so we're going for like a half range, 2/3. That's a lot. That means that we're like really good here, right?
Yeah.
Like as in like equity advantage and some nut advantage. Because if you go like 2/3 with like half your range, that means that you're like pretty much like a lot ahead.
Yeah. I think it's really clear when villain calls under the gun. He has a lot of like two over cards, and if you do have a hand like 10x, there is a lot of incentive betting 10x. Like you can see 10x is a very high frequency bet as to like checking,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because there's just so much value to get from like two over cards.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah,
understand here the ace four and the ace three suited as being bluffs, obviously. But I don't. What I don't get is all these suited broadways that keep getting bet at like decent frequency. So I can understand the 9-8 suited, the 8-7 suited, right?
mhm,
All the sets there, the deuces. Interesting that we have deuces in the first place.
yeah,
At like 100% frequency. So I guess it's one of those hands that you just turn into a triple barrel
yeah,
if you don't hit. It just like serves us as a bluff because it almost never wins a showdown. So deuce
yeah,
is just like even three-way. I think you see this a lot, right? Like deuce is getting turned into like the ultimate bluff because it almost never wins a showdown,
yeah, right.
right? Okay, so but what I don't understand is like the ace jack, right?
Mhm.
Some ace queens, but rarely king queen, king jack, queen jack. Do they just block top pair, and that's why we're using them as bluffs?
I think it blocks a lot of like kings and queens and just like when you do bet with king queen you do okay, because you block like ace king, ace queen, and like pocket kings and pocket queens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes like villain's range is heavily weighted towards like low pocket pairs. So like let's say a hand like eights that was like check calling and like nines that are check calling, and like maybe some ace jack that's check
Yeah.
calling. These hands will basically easily fold against a double barrel,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, then become betting king queen just becomes like really good, and the times that you do hit on the river, yeah, like most likely still best in some sort
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you don't get check raised on the flop, so you can see like villain under the gun is supposed to like check raise really, really like aggressively with like value hands, and if you don't get check raised on the flop and on the turn, then king queen on the river, if you hit a queen, it should be a really clear three barrel value bet basically. So yeah,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would think like if I let's say I bet king queen on the turn and if villain still calls and if the king comes on the river and the undergun player checks, I would
It's
say
a
like king
very easy
queen
value bet, but I
value
think
bet.
we have to go for
Yeah.
like a smaller size.
So it's like, well, there is like some all-in shoves and then there's like a 66%. So
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, I would say like just bet 66. But if like let's say under the gun wasn't check raising as much, meaning if he doesn't check raise as much aces, kings, and queens, and he
Then
was
you
like
want to
just like
go for like a maybe
like a thin value,
sometimes yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Also
So
like
for sure,
one
mhm,
more, I think one more question. Wait, I think it escaped my mind.
mhm.
Oh yeah, what is early position check raising with on the turn? Because I think this is really interesting. If
Okay,
we just deny the king. So
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 if
on
we
on the turn, yeah.
yeah, so check raising a bunch of well
Is this not
10x.
not river still? We
Uh
still have the
oh,
king
wait,
there.
wait.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's supposed to be this, and then this,
Yeah,
right? So
there we go.
we're never check
Never check
raising
raising because
basically.
we were like behind in like range advantage.
Yeah, right. I think we
Okay.
can see here. Uh, yeah.
Holy
Well, I
moly,
guess.
holy moly, this is huge. So like top
Yeah.
part of range we're crushed. Bottom part we have like some extra equity with like the I think the extra equity come from like some other
Ace
like
highs.
yeah, ace highs.
Yeah. Overcards. And then the times that we do get crushed, we are always like crushed by like two pair sets and like yeah, all the bunch of stuff like against like over pairs because the button has more like sixes, I would say. Like under the gun doesn't really open fives all the time if you play it perfectly. So the button has like more fives, sixes, and like tens. So yeah, when the under the gun player doesn't check raise on the flop, his range really like is heavily discounted from like having fives and sixes. Yeah, and then when you go to the turn, the button really just really has a lot of sixes and fives in his range that you really just can't afford to check raise value,
Yeah.
check raise aces for value, that kind of thing. So yeah, uh, I think it's good that like bunker solver is just like having one method approach where like it just calls, instead of like breaking it into two strategies which might be harder to play. Uh, so yeah, so in some sort of sense, you can see how playing multi-way is quite simple but not executed well by most
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, uh, yeah, I think that's about it. But it's really like a simple simulation, I would say. And if you do spend some time learning how to play multi-way, I think it's one of the ways where you can increase your win rate a lot. I think high stakes regs don't really have to spend much time because multi-way pots don't really happen in high stakes. It's a lot of like three betting pre-flop and stuff. But in low stakes where you end up in like four-way pots, like I think some of my students have like very big leagues where they have king queen, they have like top pair on like king 10-6, and they just can't get away from top pair good kicker on a board that is really connected, right?
Yeah.
uh, and it's a big mistake. um, if you do run some simulations, you will know like calling king queen there um, to a triple barrel is like never good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually for me. It always was like pretty easy to let go of because I just see that my opponent just does that with like top pair, top kicker, and better like all the time, and they
Right,
don't
right, right.
bluff enough like
Yeah.
almost ever. Like I
So if
haven't seen.
if you have like king queen or like king 10-4, and you face a check raise, you should always be really like alarm bells should be like ringing if it's like a four-way pot,
For
Um,
sure, for sure.
yeah,
Holy
yeah, for
moly!
sure. But
Yeah,
I think,
that's.
but I think in like low stakes, people just can't get away from like king queen. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, if you wanna increase your win rate in low stakes, I think up to even 50 NL, like this is the way to go. So yeah,
Yeah, this
look
is
into
a
lower
way to
pots.
go. I'd say that like there's like plenty of ways to go, but if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
go like above that, this is also the way to go.
right,
It's
right,
like
right.
mandatory.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely compulsory. So yeah,
Right? Do you
so
want to go back to Pio? Do you still have time, by the way?
yeah, I still have like an hour plus.
All right.
We could do like, so I have like two more Monka Solver Sims and I have like a bunch of other hands that I've played. Which one would you like prefer?
I think like it's good to take a 3 minute break and
Okay,
then go back to the Pio hands.
okay, all right,
All right.
sounds
I'll
good.
run quickly to the bathroom.
Okay,
I'll put a break clip on stream. So I'll mute you. I'll put a break clip on stream. Okay. And
yep.
then I will be back in 3 minutes, guys. So we'll be right back. Oh, this is good. That guy called. Oh, great turn. Okay. And Sakal is with. Come on, bro. Wow, that fucking hurt. Hmm? Oh, the laughter that came with that flop. Oh my god. The laughter that came with that flop was ridiculous. Oh my god. Also, welcome. Oh my god, three-way all in. Nervous. Queen stands and jacks again. Oh my fucking god, everybody has it. Oh my god. What the fuck is this? This is the craziest fuck. Someone clip that. Someone clip that right now. This is the craziest fucking pot that's ever been like. I've probably like ever like witnessed. Even if it's like in a $40 satellite. How the fuck do you get queens versus stands versus jack? Really happy to see this ace jack. Running at days 4. Flop seems very, very decent. He spikes the 4 on the turn, but we can get back with the diamond and a jack. But we don't, so that's kind of it. GG's. We're out with the bad beat, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine with me, my dude. That is super ultra fine, honestly. We're tied. Out jam 9s in this spot, honestly, and think it's better that way. Help. Lol. Wow. Lol, dude. Oh man, that is something. Being like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just absolutely ridiculous. All right, three-way. Let's go. King Jack, and queens. Dodge a king. Fucking hell. What the fuck? Queen.